think we need to start a reading project. I understand, though. When you see a book with the title Education, you think, oh, that's for teachers. The book was written for parents. It's for young people, too. If we want to understand true education, if we want to restore true education, then we'd better read our textbook on education. So that's your homework. And this book has been hailed by educators worldwide, secular educators, even leaders of governments. I'm told in the nation of Ghana, here in Africa, Seventh-day Adventist leaders were visiting the Secretary of Education for the government and were surprised to see a well-worn copy of the book. Or India, when they gained their independence in 1947, used the book Education to shape their philosophy of education. One time, Dr. Florence Stratemeyer, who was a world-leading curriculum authority, Roman Catholic by religion, was asked to give a lecture on education to a group of Seventh-day Adventist teachers. I'll let you pause and think about that for just a moment. The source for the principles of education that she expounded in her talk was none other than the Seventh-day Adventist own book, Education. And speaking of the book, she said I found the book 50 years ahead of its time. She said, the breadth and depth of its philosophy amazed me. Its concept of balanced education, harmonious development, and thinking and acting on principle are advanced educational concepts. The objective of restoring in man the image of God, the teaching of parental responsibility, and the emphasis on self-control in the child are ideals the world desperately needs. Friends, this is a Roman Catholic educator, world-leading curriculum authority, pointing to our ahead of its time. How can we be going to the world looking for educational methodology when God has given us something that will make us the head and not the tail? Or as the Lord asks in Christian Education, page 38, when the Lord requires us to be distinct and peculiar, how can we crave popularity or seek to imitate the customs and practices of the world? So we've seen how important it is. We've seen the historical significance. We've seen it must begin in the family. We've seen this is for everyone. We're never graduated. But perhaps we still need to ask the question, so what is true education? Can we define it? All right. True education, of course, is a big topic, but it can be simply defined in three basic principles. We're going to take the first, and redemption are synonymous, to restore the image of God in the soul. This has already been alluded to in our education, the book Education, which tells us, in the highest sense, the work of education and the work of redemption are one. Now, I've been teaching on this for some time, and I was always so focused on trying to define education. How do we connect education with redemption? And then it hit me one day, our problem is we don't understand redemption. We're trying to define education. And if we're trying to define it by redemption, we'd best understand what redemption is. Because we're so influenced by the common evangelical idea of what redemption is. If you go out into the churches today and ask what is redemption, what you hear? Well, that's forgiveness, pardon from sin. Okay, so is redemption pardon from sin? Say again? Part of it. Amen. I should have heard at least one amen, that redemption is pardon from sin. Are we not thankful for that? But does redemption stop with pardon from sin? No, it does not. It's freedom from sin. And not only freedom from sin, transformation of character so you don't even want to sin. That's redemption. As we're told in the book Desire of Ages, Redemption is that process by which the soul is trained for heaven. Who wants to be trained for heaven? That's true education. When I read this in the book in Desire of Ages, I thought, wait, that's educational terminology. Redemption is that process by which the soul is trained for heaven. Okay, so now we can understand true education and redemption, same thing, because both of them are a process of training for heaven. So this becomes a standard of measurement as you analyze an educational path, a decision you're making, an activity, a career choice, a curriculum, a teacher, a class, whatever it is. You need to ask the question, does this have its goal of redemption? In other words, is this, whatever I'm considering, is this preparing me, training me for heaven? If you can say, yes, this is training me for heaven, okay, that's part of true education. If you say, no, I think this is maybe not training me for heaven, well then, better discard it and focus on something that is. The true object of education is to restore the image of God in the soul. This is what this process of redemption is all about, because God created man in his own image, but sin has damaged this image of God, and something must be done to restore it. And that is why we are told the great work of parents and teachers is character building, seeking to restore the image of Christ in those placed under their care. Restoration, character building. This is not something that happens overnight. You don't build character by flipping a switch one day when the child is 8 years old. No, this is a process. This is, as the Spirit of Prophecy says, little lessons oft repeated. A process of transformation. Proverbs gives us some more insight into this. In a verse I think we all know well, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. So, two aspects here. It says the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. And not the sum total, but the beginning. It's the start. So if we want to begin with wisdom, we need to begin with the fear of the Lord. Can somebody help me define the fear of the Lord? What is the fear of the Lord? I'm hearing a murmur. Keep his commandments. Okay, very good. Apart from evil, right? So fearing the Lord is learning to obey God. And I would say also respect him, right? To respect and obey God. That's the beginning of wisdom. Now let's think about this in an educational perspective. As we teach a child or a young person, often we focus a lot on teaching them to respect and obey God. And yet many times, once they've learned to respect and obey God, I think we say, okay, job done. But if we look at the verse in Proverbs, that's only step one. It says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, not the sum total. Because what's the next part say? The knowledge of the holy is understanding. So if you really want understanding, if you really want true education, what do you need? The knowledge of the holy. Now this word knowledge, in English, when we say knowledge, we just think sort of information. But to the Hebrew mind, that word knowledge meant intimate connection, relationship. So what's the Bible saying? The first step, learn to respect and obey God. But if you really want true education, you need relationship with him. We're also told that the foundation of true education is in the fear of the Lord. Let's think about what it means to have a foundation. Can you see the foundation? No, you can't. You can only see the results of a foundation. If you decided to build your house, but you wanted to save money, so you left off the foundation, would people see that you did not have a foundation? I see some no, I see some yes. In the first month, would they see you did not have a foundation? No. 10 years from now, would they see you did not have a foundation? Yes, they would, right? So if the foundation is in the fear of the Lord, this is something that is laid in the home. No one's watching. It's a careful work of character building that people don't see. You only see the results. And this is important for us to realize. Many times we see a child who can get up front and do a special music. We see a young person who can get up and preach, who can recite their memory verses, and we think, wow, what a great character. Those things are only externals, something that people don't see. You only see the results. For this, the Bible should be made the foundation of education, should be made the foundation of study and teaching. And as connected with redemption, we're told the first great lesson in true education is to know and understand the will of God. And I wish we had time to get into a study of this more in depth. We are given practical steps to know and understand the will of God. Can you imagine if every parent made it their goal to teach their little child how to know God's will? If young people grew up knowing God's will, what a change we would see take place. So point one is that true education and redemption are synonymous. Point two is that true education is the harmonious development of the physical, the mental, and the spiritual powers. Now, what does harmonious mean? I think we could simply say shofar. Now, we just heard a beautiful rendition of some amazing hymns. Let's suppose that shofar's tenors decided, I don't want to blend in anymore. I want everybody to hear the tenor part. And they sang, just belted it out more loudly than everyone else. Harmonious. No, it would not. You would lose the harmony. The very balance, equal parts. So when we're told that the true education is the harmonious development of and the one sitting right behind you, can you come up here and help me? Thank you. All right. Physical, mental, and spiritual. You can stand on this side of me. You can stand right here. Excellent. So for sake of illustration, we're going to have our brother here represent the mental. And this one's here is going to represent the spiritual, and I'm going to represent the physical. We're going to do a depiction of what we just read here. Why don't you put your elbow on my shoulder, support yourself against me. Put your elbow. Just, yeah, like that. Do the same. Exactly. All right, excellent. Now, lift up your left leg so you're truly leaning on me. Yeah, lift up the right leg. Yeah, sure, either one. There we go, that works. Yeah, all right. Okay, very good. I can feel the weight a little bit. So, here we have a depiction of what we just read. Spiritual, physical, dependent upon, I said that wrong. Spiritual, mental, dependent upon the physical. All right. Now, what will happen if I move out of the way right now? Yeah, they're getting worried. The whole thing would collapse, right? Yeah. Now, do we want strong spiritual abilities? Do we want strong mental abilities? So where do we need to start? With the physical. All right, thanks, guys. So many times we want to pressure academic readiness, and the Lord says, wait. So many times we want to pressure spiritual training, and we think working in the garden, the workshop, cooking the meals, cleaning the kitchen, we think those things are secondary. No, they're the foundation for spiritual and mental development. This is both in a present perspective in terms of a day-to-day level that each one of us as adults must have proper physical activity to have strong mental abilities and spiritual abilities. It is also true in the chronological sense of the development of a child. This is why we're told, I have it here, Christian Education, page 13, in the early education of children, many parents and teachers fail to understand that the greatest attention needs to be given to the physical constitution that a healthy condition of body and brain may be secured. Okay, so it's a day-to-day thing for each one of us. We all need physical activity to keep our mind strong. It affects our walk with the Lord. But it's also chronological, that there's a foundation to be laid in childhood in the physical development that helps them do better, that helps lay the foundation for mental and spiritual development later on. We'll talk more about that in a later session. This is why one of the reasons we're told the study of books only cannot. They need physical. Many, many benefits have been shown from physical activity, improving overall mental health and quality of life, enhancing brain function and cognition, improving behavior and concentration, increasing blood and oxygen flow to the brain, increasing the levels of norepinephrine and endorphins, resulting in reduction of stress and improvement of mood, increasing growth factors that help create new nerve cells and support synaptic plasticity, and many other benefits. It provides an unparalleled stimulus, creating an environment in which the brain is ready, willing, and able to learn. This is one of the great reasons the Lord has told us that the time of study must be divided between the gaining of book knowledge and the securing of a knowledge of practical work. Dividing the time. This is important. Just to clarify, if there's any parents here with young children listening, this is not applicable to young children. This is speaking of youth. For young children, the time should be much more in physical activity. Again, come to the later sessions for more on that. Now, let us break down a little bit as to what physical training will entail. First of all, that is useful work. What is useful work? Give me some examples. Cleaning, all right. Gardening. Say again? Mowing, you said? Lawn mowing? Mowing lawns, yes. Getting sand, I like it. I think there was some of that happened, wasn't there? Yeah. Practical stuff. Useful work are those practical duties that we all need to learn. It's really amazing how many university graduates don't know how to clean their own bathroom. And yet it goes back to the family, doesn't it? I have a friend from Mexico. Now, there's an essential ingredient in Mexican cuisine. It's called the tortilla. Can't have Mexican food without tortillas. Well, there's two ways of making tortillas. You can make tortillas with a machine, with a press, but everyone in Mexico knows the best tortillas are made by hand. And my friend was just telling me, he said, well, every grandmother in Mexico knows how to make tortillas by hand. He said, my mother knows how to make them. My grandmother knows how to make them. My sisters, well, they went to school. And not that there's something wrong with them going to school, but it's just an important illustration. Where do we expect our children to learn these practical skills? We need to be prioritizing it. And we're even told that the greatest benefit is not gained from exercise that's taken as play or exercise merely. There is some benefit in being in the fresh air and also from the exercise of the muscles, but let the same amount of energy be given to the performance of useful work and the benefit will be greater. So rather than some competitive sports program which trains bad character traits anyway, or things that are just exercise for the sake of exercise, we're told it will get a greater benefit from useful work. We're told an important phase of education is lacking if the student is not taught how to engage in useful labor. And every man, woman, and child should be educated to useful work, practical useful work. Very clear. All right, a second component of physical training is manual training. This is more specific than physical training. Physical training is just general. Yeah, I said that a little wrong. Useful work is just general useful work. Manual training is a specific, where you're training a specific skill or a trade that one may be able to support themselves with. And we're told manual training is deserving of far more attention than it has received. If you look at the history of Israel, we're told how God specifically I instructed the children of Israel that every young person was to learn a trade. And we know that this was carried out even as late as Jesus' day. Jesus was a carpenter. But even later than that, Paul was a tent maker. Now, think about this. Paul, do you think Paul needed his tent-making skills when he was on the Sanhedrin? Probably not. Probably had plenty of money. When did he need his tent-making skills? When he was a missionary. Are we training missionaries? Should we be training missionaries? Do they need tent-making skills? You may not think they need it, but you never know when God will call them into a line in which they will need to fall back on one of those trades that they learned. So it's very important. Every youth on leaving school should have acquired a knowledge of some trade or occupation by which, if need be, he may earn a livelihood. Students should not be permitted, don't even let them, you listening, school leadership here, should not be permitted to take so many studies that they have no time for physical training. This health cannot be preserved unless some portion of each day other exertion in the open air. Stated hours, not minutes, should be devoted to manual labor of some kind. This is important. If the youth can have but a one-sided education, which is of the greatest consequence? The study of the sciences with all the disadvantages to health and life, or the knowledge of labor for practical life? We unhesitatingly say the latter. If one must be neglected, let it be the study of books. So if you find you don't have time for both, let the bookwork go. Focus on what is more important. Point 3, agriculture. This is another vital element of physical training. We're told no line of manual training is of more value than agriculture. Much that could be said. We could take an hour talking about agriculture. Don't worry, I won't do so. Now, let me just talk about a few benefits they found in studies in children who were involved. Get the Grow Potatoes app, press a few buttons, the potatoes come out. No. So I think, of course, gardening teaches you patience and perseverance, right? You have to care for it. Better science understanding, better test scores, overall better learners. One study found children did better mathematically, did better in reading, did better in spelling, all as a result of spending time in the garden. There is a bacteria known as Mycobacterium vaccae that has been found to reduce depression, improve lung health, boost the immune system, fight cancer, strengthen the digestive system, treat arthritis, improve emotional and mental health, lower stress and anxiety, reduce allergies, and even make you smarter. Anyone wanting this bacteria? You find it in the dirt. No, don't worry, we're not serving dirt for breakfast. But you can simply put your hands in the soil, go barefoot in the soil, even a little of the dust that gets kicked up, and you breathe a little bit. It's good for our health. So we find many reasons that God has designed that we spend more time in the garden. And of course, there's many academic subjects that could be learned. You can learn math, you can learn science, and many other things. This is one of the reasons we are told to live in the country. One of the reasons we're told that our schools should be in the country. We're told the Garden of Eden was not only Adam's dwelling, but his schoolroom. Study and agricultural lines should be the A, B, and C of the educational work of our school. This is the very first work that must be entered upon. As a friend of mine, we were talking about how many of our schools have been removing the agriculture programs, and my friend said, "Why are they doing so?" I said, "Well, the reason usually given is that they're not profitable." And my friend said, "Wait a minute. No one ever asks if history class is profitable. No one ever asks if math class is profitable. Why are we asking if agriculture class is profitable?" It's because we're not viewing it as an essential component of education. How many here are preparing to be missionaries? Students, graduating class. The usefulness learned on the school farm is the very education that is most essential for those who go out as missionaries to many foreign fields. Essential training. Now here's one that really got my attention. This is fascinating. This should be for each one of us, no matter if we're part of this school or elsewhere. In the laws which God gave for the cultivation of the soil, he was giving the people, this is talking about the children of Israel here, the opportunity to overcome their selfishness and become heavenly minded. Canaan would be to them as Eden if they obeyed the word of the Lord. Through them, the Lord designed to teach all nations of the world how to cultivate the soil so that it would yield healthy fruit, free from disease. Through what? Through his people, God designed to teach all nations of the world how to cultivate the soil. What does God want us to be teaching the world? How to cultivate the soil. Now, I just have to ask, what are we famous for as Seventh-day Adventists? I wish. It's a few different things that we're famous for, but I'm afraid we're not famous. But it was God's will that we would be. And let me share with you briefly what it could be. A couple of years ago, I visited a farm. I won't mention the location because it's not important where it was. This farm was in a location with terrible, heavy soil. They developed methods to correct it. They are 100% organic. They have incredible, healthy, productive plants. I have never in the entire world seen such incredibly healthy plants and produce. They are financially profitable, extremely profitable. And as I began to learn about them, they are known all over their country. The government is sending people to learn from them. Do you think that's a mission opportunity? Universities are sending classes. Go, spend 2 weeks on the farm, learn their methods. Do you think that's a mission opportunity? They're fulfilling the purpose. God desired that we teach the nations how to cultivate the soil in a manner that's free from disease, sustainably. There's a challenge for the Pure Light Farm. All right. Mental culture. We're going to talk about this point, and we'll wrap up with our final point on true education. Mental culture. We focus heavily on mental culture in traditional education. And when we talk about true education, we try to swing that balance and talk about the importance of physical training. This is not to ignore mental culture, however. Mental culture is vitally important. However, it is essential that we understand it correctly. We are told in the book, the image of God is endowed with a power akin to absorb other men's thoughts, commit that to memory, write it down on the test, and we of other men's thoughts. We're not really training a thinker. How many of you at one point in your education, or maybe many times, said, you say, why? When will I ever use this? Just trust me, you will someday. You slowly, now some students protest more than others, but you slowly get pressed and you accept the idea that, okay, that's the information I need to learn. Let me learn it. Okay, that's the information I need to learn. Let me learn it. I don't know why. Somebody says I do. I'll just learn it. I still don't understand why, but I'm told I need to learn it. And so you're learning to trust someone else's thinking rather than think for yourself. Now, there's a very important reason for this, and I want to take this from, first of all, Ministry of Healing 449. It is not well to crowd the mind with studies that require intense application, but that are not brought into use in the practical life. Such an education will be a loss to the student. Okay, ponder that for a moment. You learn a bunch of information without actually putting it into practical life, and you think, well, at least I learned something. No, it says it was a loss. It is not enough even to have knowledge. We must have the ability to use the knowledge aright. And we read in Studies in Christian Education from E.A. Sutherland about the work of the Counter-Reformation through the Jesuit schools. The following methods of teaching are characteristic of the Jesuit schools. The memory was cultivated as a means of keeping down or suppressing free activity of thought and clearness of judgment. It sought showy results with which to dazzle the world. A well-rounded development was nothing. The Jesuits did not aim at developing all the faculties of their pupils. Okay, what did they do? Cultivate the memory so you could suppress their thinking abilities. Sound familiar? When a student could make a brilliant display from the resources of a well-stored memory, he had reached the highest points to which the Jesuits sought to lead him. Originality and independence of mind, love of truth for its own sake, the power of reflecting and forming correct judgments were not merely neglected, they were suppressed in the Jesuit system. I think we see the same methods in play today. But there's a reason behind all of this. The papal system of education makes teachers content to repeat set lessons to their students as they themselves learn them in school, with no thought of making practical application. The students in turn go out to teach others the same rote they have learned, and thus the endless treadmill goes on, ever learning, but never getting anywhere. The Bible speaks of this, as it speaks of those who are ever learning but never coming to a knowledge of the truth, but never finishing the work. I say that to make practical application. Someone else tells you what to learn. Fill your mind with information. You never put it into practice. Habit of learning without applying what you learn. And so you go to church and you hear a fantastic sermon. Powerful sermon, steps on your toes, shows you some things you need to change, and you say, that was great, and you go home and eat lunch. And nothing more. And we become a generation full of information, good information, present truth information. But it's not changing us, because we are accustomed to learning without applying. And we have graduates from mission schools full, and I give you this challenge, graduates, full of knowledge, good knowledge. You've chosen a good place to learn. Knowledge doesn't work a transformation in your character. You have not fulfilled fundamentals of Christian education. Too great devotion to study, even of true science, creates an abnormal appetite which increases as it is fed. This creates a desire to secure more knowledge than is essential. Knowledge merely for its own sake diverts the mind from devotion to God and checks advance along the path of practical holiness and hinders souls from traveling in the way which leads to a holier habit. Only such a measure of instruction as could be utilized. Jesus on this earth, he only gave what could be put component. And let's remember, what can we take with us to heaven? Character. Okay, so let's make sure we're forming a character that is fit for heaven. Our third and final point, which I'll just briefly touch on for sake of time, is that true education is preparation for service here and throughout eternity. So you see a progression here. First of all, anonymous, restoring the image of God in the soul. So we have a work of restoration. This is done through the harmonious development of the physical, mental, and spiritual powers. With what purpose? With a purpose of training for service. The book, The Ministry of Healing, gives us a definition. It says, true education is. Now, I get excited when I find a statement like that in the spirit of prophecy. Okay, we're going to make this simple. True education is. What is it? How could we finish this sentence? We could say redemption. We could say harmonious development. We could say practical application. So many things we could put here. But what does it tell us? True education is missionary training. Now that makes it simple, doesn't it? Every son and daughter of God is called to be a missionary. We are called to the service of God and our fellow men, and to fit us for this service should be the object of our education. Very clear. Now, what does it mean to be a missionary? Does this mean you go to the streets with a loudspeaker and preach? Not necessarily. Being a missionary might mean being a mechanic. being a missionary might mean helping your neighbor build his house. Being a missionary might mean being a Bible worker. Being a missionary